Hello. Welcome back. I'm Janet, the Plant Powered Peddler, and I'm here today with Nan Simonson again. She's going to cook for us and talk to us more about Dr. Goldner and how to step down from her 6 weeks rapid recovery without the doc. She did it without her. So, okay, Nan, take it away and record.
Hey, thank you. Let's see. Send a request to meeting host. Okay. Hi, I'm Nan Simonson, and I am a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. And I was asked by Janet if I would share my experience of stepping down from Dr. Goldner's 6-week rapid recovery. No, it wasn't rapid recovery. I'm going to clarify something with you or for you because you may be as confused as I was in the beginning. There's Goodbye Lupus, Goodbye Autoimmune. There is hypernourishment. There is rapid recovery. What are all of those? Actually, I'm excited to say that I'm going to be part of her January 24th rapid recovery group, January 24th, 25. Although I did a 6-week Goodbye Lupus Protocol. That simply means on my own, as opposed to with her help, on her individual mentoring. I used her books, used the videos online to direct me, and doing that, I did a 6-week I'll say rather strict, probably never perfect, because as she says, from time to time, people will say, well, I did it just the way you said, and she'll ask a few questions and find that that wasn't really the case, not intentional, but there were things that were misunderstood. So I did what I could for 6 weeks. I came into it hoping to reverse Hashimoto's. The way we know, and I've had it for 15, 18 years, the way we know that an autoimmune disease like her lupus, which she now recovered from or reversed 20 years ago, almost 20 years at 20, the antibodies are gone. Well, I have 3 autoimmune conditions. One is rheumatoid arthritis. No symptoms since I went whole food plant-based 6 years ago, going on 7 now. It's been 6 full years. But I still have the antibodies. Hashimoto's, well, anyone can just take the Synthroid levothyroxine or whatever and not have symptoms. Well, I have been symptom free again since going plant-based. But still antibodies. And then I have something called microscopic colitis, which if I mess around with food, especially gluten, I know it's still active, and there's no antibodies for that. But the 2 that I saw, the rheumatoid factor and the thyroglobulin, both went down when the 6 weeks were up. I just had another test. I'm waiting for the rheumatoid factor to come in. The test was just a few days ago. But the the thyroglobulin has gone down again. And she said when that happens, because they have to die off, and if nothing new is coming up, then you will see it fall. And it did. It went from 52 before her protocol to 41, and now it's 34. Yay! So I'm really pleased about those results. And the big thing for me was 6 years of a very high positive, but it was negative to be sure that this was so high, something called the ESR, which is erythrocyte sedentary rate. And when that is high, you have inflammation somewhere in your body. It's not specific. And that was really high. And it's been high for 6 years, but I've had 3 rheumatologists that with all other testing couldn't find anything else that would explain it. Well, that went back to normal at the end of the 6 weeks. Now, gotta be honest, it went back up again to 33. Darn it, it was 20, it went from 50 something or 48, 49 to 22, which is normal. It's never been normal. And it's back up to 33, and I think I know why. I got carried away, and I'm just giving you this in case you get carried away. I have the feeling that a lot of you are part of Dr. Goldner's tribe, and you may know what I'm talking about. I was so specific to be on the Goodbye Lupus Protocol, which meant hypernourishment, as well as high raw, no cooked food, no steamed food. And those foods were primarily leafy greens as well as cruciferous vegetables, 96 ounces or more. For me, it was 100 plus of water, and then a half a cup of flax or chia or both, or 3 tablespoons of the cold pressed flaxseed oil a day. And I did that and I was perfect. Well, step down means that I have seen results. I'm stepping down from high raw. I'm now doing steamed foods, and that's what I'm talking to you about. I may have been premature. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing here, but I'll know better when I'm about to see her in January. If I don't see, I think by then, all of those numbers gone and the ESR gone, because I'll finish my thought and finish my sentence. I got carried away. I had heard her say to somebody, when you're really seeing success, you can see things disappear that you didn't expect. For example, she said, I've seen people with celiac disease be able to eat gluten. Ooh, did I want to hear that? The microscopic colitis has a lot to do with a sensitivity for gluten. Anybody that has it will be told, and I have a gene for gluten sensitivity, will be told to stay away from gluten. So I got carried away. And while we were on our holiday following that 6-week period, I had a couple of sandwiches, beautiful whole grain wheat breads. But clearly I shouldn't have done it. I saw it for weeks afterwards in symptoms that are part of microscopic colitis, including a rash that I get from gluten. And I shouldn't have, and maybe that's why the SED rate went back up. I'll know more because that's all taken care of. So today I'm going to show you what step down looks like for me. And regardless of whether or not I went too fast, I don't know. I think it was the wheat. I don't know. I just know that doing that protocol clean for 6 weeks took care of everything. And I'll go back to that in a heartbeat, and I'll do it for months. It took her 3 months to back down and be free of lupus, which she had been told, and most people are told by rheumatologists to this day cannot be reversed. And yet she was able to do that, and I'll take that time. So I have a pan that's hot. I have another pan that I'm about to turn on. And these are the foods that I've been, well, stepping down, but really stepping up to. In other words, not high raw anymore, but certain things are consistent. Every day, I drink 2 of these and 2 14-ounce glasses, one at my bedside in the morning and another one as soon as I come downstairs, plus 2 of these 22 ounces each, plus my smoothies. And my smoothies have 42 ounces of water in them. You add that together, that's 100 ounces of water. So I'm still following the protocol in that way. In other words, I am fully hyper nourishing. The smoothies have more than a half a cup of flax chia. I mix the 2 and just go a little heavier on flax. I'm playing with smoothies. This is my favorite. I love these green smoothies. But I also play with what I call a pretty pink smoothie. And so I've been making some smoothies a couple of times a week. but it's mainly the green ones because my green has so much kale and spinach and broccoli. And well, I'm not going to use this time to go into that. I've talked about that on other videos, and I even have a video that shows that smoothie being made based on her protocol. The pink one I also have, and that one is made with red cabbage. It's 13 ounces. I think today was a little less. That's all I had of red cabbage, and then spinach, and then all the other things I put in the smoothie, and they're just delicious. My husband gets about half that amount as well, kind of a vote of kindness, because if I give him too much, I end up having to have more of it in some other way, which actually I do anyway, but he gets a glass every day of my smoothies and he really likes them. I'm going to show you what else I do, but first I'm going to get something started. Stepping down means you can have food that is cooked. You can have whole food, plant-based foods, still adding and focusing on, at least I am, a minimum of 1.5 pounds of leafy green and cruciferous a day. So I throw in broccoli, I throw in cabbage, I throw in Brussels sprouts, as opposed to green beans. Green beans are fine, but if you compare the nutritional value to the cruciferous vegetables, cruciferous is way up here, and some of the other foods, some of the other really honored vegetables are not. And since I'm still thinking hypernourishment, I end up with broccoli quite often, but it's steamed. There are times that I'll do what I did when I was doing the protocol, and that is that I'll just put out a platter for myself of broccoli, cauliflower, radishes. Radishes are cruciferous. I like jicama. I'll chop up jicama. I will put some green beans. I'll put some celery out, some cucumber, and as she did, some guacamole, and just eat that raw. That's about as good as it gets. Well, one of the things that I'm having tonight for dinner will be that broccoli steamed. Another thing I'm going to have is, oh, is it still on? Yes. I have a Breville hot air oven, and it's on bake, and it's on 400 degrees. And I don't know if you can see this, but I offered, when we went to a Thanksgiving meal a couple of days ago, a big, well, like this, but 5 times as much of these stuffed shells. And the shells are bathed in a tomato sauce with no sugar, no oil, and the shells are whole brown rice shells that are filled raw, put into the bath of pasta sauce, marinara sauce, spaghetti sauce, but first stuffed with ricotta that is made of cannellini beans and tofu. And tofu is something that I really enjoy, and that is absolutely something that works well with step down. It's a high protein food, it's high in fiber, it's high in good fat. I'm going to put the foil down. If this foil, and this is just an aside, it's just me. If this foil were touching the food, I would have a piece of parchment over it rather than having it touch it, just to keep the aluminum and from touching the food having a chance to infuse. In other words, if I was putting potatoes in an oven wrapped in aluminum foil, which I don't do, but if I did, I would put the parchment around them and then put them in the foil. I'm going to put this in my oven, and you're going to get to see it, I hope. If I haven't spoken and just talked too long, there we go. And then we're also going to start our meal with this. Something else that I just love. Look at these big beauties. And I have them prepared. We have a farm store near us. I live in Southern California, and today was 77 degrees. And some of you are thinking, oh, you're such a braggart. We get cold and we get rainy, but not much. Okay, you know what? I shouldn't have taken it out because I had it perfect so that there was no, well, it's gonna work itself out. So I put that on in the, on the stove, and that's going to be cooking for 30 minutes. And I just have to remember to turn it down. This thing starts out turbo and I'll turn it down. And as it softens, the heavy lid will go down. While we're eating that, I'll steam the broccoli for 6 minutes so that it's very lightly steamed. And we'll eat that. We'll then have the broccoli, and we're going to have the stuffed shells for dinner tonight, although I'm going to be showing you something else that I'm making. So what's in this hot pot? So far, nothing. The point is nothing. And what I mean by that is that I'm going to be making a soup, and it's a savory white bean and kale soup that is vegan and oil-free. Most recipes, if you just Googled, well, if you Google just about any soup, just about anybody will say put in 2 or 3 tablespoons of, even if it's olive oil, which isn't bad, it's mainly an omega-9. We in this protocol are really trying to bring up our ratio of omega-3s. Just about everything has omega-9s. That's problems with most oils. I don't mean omega-9s. Most have omega-6, and we're way out of balance. The ratio should be 1:1, 1:3, 6:3, 1:9 at the very, well, outside. But many people who eat processed foods, who use vegetable oils, are going to be 1, which is the omega-3, 2, 20 or 30 or more. And that makes those omega-6s highly inflammatory. Even if they're out of range 1 to 15, they're inflammatory. The whole point of omega-3s is that they are very anti-inflammatory. So I've got a dry pan, and I'm starting with my onion. And the recipe calls for, and Janet has the recipe, and we didn't talk about it in advance. I felt badly that I hadn't brought that up earlier to her. So
I did say that I would send it out. I sent you an email back saying I would send it out with the Zoom recording.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. If it's okay with you.
Yeah. Okay. I was a little late on that. So I'm throwing in just a little bit of broth. Although the recipe calls for onion, I happen to have 1.5 leeks. I like leeks. They have a nice, they're just a mild onion, and they have just a bit of a difference in their flavor. So I'm going to heat that for a couple of minutes. Then I'm going to throw in the other, put this lower, savory vegetables like carrot and celery and garlic. The things that you would put into a pan for a soup or a stew in the French tradition called a mirepoix. And I'm just bringing this down just a little bit because the onion has a lot of its own moisture. And so I can do that actually, usually in a dry pan, but leeks are a little bit more fibrous, and so they don't have quite as much moisture, but they're breaking down nicely. You can see they're kind of, well, you can't really see the color of them. They're greening. And rather than continuing to talk, just so I can get this done, and then we can do questions and answers, is I'm going to add celery and carrots. I love a very vegetable-based and a very brothy stew or soup. Some people like them thicker, really thick, that you could almost pick up the stew with a crusty bread and eat it off the bread. That's not my favorite way. And so I have plenty of broth in this soup. You could cut down a little. And in the recipe, I make the note that you could do another step that I'm not doing. Let me show you something, just in case you don't know what I'm referring to when I say an immersion blender. Invest in one of these, they're very handy. because if I had wanted this soup to be creamier, as opposed to just brothy and chunky, creamier, I could, after I put in, and there's another ingredient, and this is a golden potato. It's about a 6-ounce potato. Could be more, could be less. And this is just to give this a real heartiness. I could have, after I cook the bean, and you'll see how that plays out. Put this a little lower. Alexa, set timer for artichokes for 30 minutes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Artichokes timing, 30 minutes, starting now.
Should have done it 25. I've been talking too well. Okay, I'm going to put in some garlic. And that's part of what you would usually see with a miracle. One thing about garlic, and it's rather moist in here right now. And it's not because of that tiny bit of broth I put in. It's because now the vegetables are weeping. And the thing about the broth, the garlic, is that if the pan were relatively dry, the onion is lightly golden browning. And I put in the garlic and I let it sit and it browned, it would add bitterness to my food. So garlic has to be treated with some sensitivity. Another thing about my garlic, and you can find this from Tammy at Nutmeg Notebook, is that I roast my garlic in advance. I could eat my garlic the way I would a savory spread. I probably wouldn't if I were going to be talking to somebody close by, but it's not the same at all as raw garlic. When it's roasted, it sweetens it and it adds an additional bit of flavor to it. It cuts out the bite. And Tammy at Nutmeg Notebook showed us all, if you just say roasted garlic, Tammy Nutmeg Notebook, how she does it. She buys the 1.5 pound bag of peeled organic garlic from Costco and roast it. That's exactly what I just did. My last batch was gone and I put it in. I'm going to add a little bit of this no chicken broth. Because it's sticking a little bit. I'm going to put in some herbs right now. I'll finish what I'm saying though. But the garlic is put on the jelly roll pan, you know, that pan a lot of people call cookie sheet, and covered. And it takes about 45 minutes with a little bit of water, and the water is replenished if necessary. And she describes all of this. And then these beautifully roasted cloves can be put into ice cube trays. And a great one to have for this and a number of things is the Tovolo silicone ice cube trays that are square and hold 2 tablespoons each. That's a great way to have tomato paste in your freezer in 2 tablespoon bunches, or aquafaba in that way. But in this case, I keep my broth, garlic that way, and I pop them out when they're frozen, put them in 1 gallon or 1 quart baggies. All of that 1.5 pounds went into 2 1 quart baggies in these neat little cubes. And then I just keep them in a container with a cover in the refrigerator and do what I'm doing now, pop them out. And even though this garlic is minced, it really just sort of mashes. It's so easy to use. I just love it. I'm adding to this even before, and almost to toast it, just a tiny bit. Even before I add the other liquids, I'm adding Italian, it's going to have you smell it. Italian seasoning mix, and you're getting thyme and you're getting rosemary and sometimes, well, no, that would be the French seasoning mix that puts the lavender in. But anyway, you get savory and oregano or marjoram. Nice. I'm throwing in just a little bit of fresh parsley. I'm putting in a little bit of salt. Now, if you're a Chef AJ or a Cameo Nutmeg Notebooker, me, I would say, oh, salt. Most of you, a lot of you don't use any salt at all. Well, on Dr. Goldner's protocol, as she says, you better, because you're drinking so much water, you're depleting or you're washing through the sodium in your body, and you could create a condition called hyponatremia, which happens when somebody is seriously low in sodium. Your body just, I'll use a very scientific terms, it goes wonky. And so she recommends that you have a teaspoon of sodium a day, or you use iodized salt. I never quite figured out how to make that work. Or you get it from some of the sea vegetables. I just take it. Another recommendation she has is just taking it by the liquid, and I do that. Okay. I'm about to add, let's see, am I done? Yes, all right. I'm about to add my beans, and this is 3 cups or 4.5 cups. It's actually just a little bit more than 4.5 cups of cooked, and if they're canned, they're rinsed and drained white beans, and I use cannellini beans. Can you see that? This looks so good. It smells fabulous.
Looks
And I'm going to
amazing.
cook it. You would think, man, you're making all of this right before dinner. Well, you wouldn't know that. It's 4:30 here. Well, maybe you would know that. And it's not tax season. The reason I say that is my husband's a CPA and tax attorney, and during tax season, 3 times a year, he gets home much later, but otherwise it's his own firm. He does what he wants. He usually gets home at about 5, and we like to eat at 5:30, so that we are we're not going to bed on a full stomach, because he, for one, goes to bed very early at 8:30 because he gets up at 4:30, does a sauna, goes up a mountain for an hour, and likes to get to work a little before or after 8:30. Okay, do I have everything? I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't think I am. This is it. Wasn't this easy? What's going to happen is it's going to cook, it's going to soften. I just added 8 cups of broth. If I feel that's too brothy and I want to cream this up, then I'll do what I showed you. I'll take that or maybe I didn't describe it. I would take the immersion blender, and rather than, as some recipes will say, taking this and putting it into a blender, then you have to be very careful not to cover it tightly, or steam can make a really ugly mess. I would use the immersion blender, blend it a little bit. In other words, break up some of the beans, which make it creamier, make it thicker. And that's another way I could do this dish. I'll be adding lemon at the end. And no, this isn't dinner tonight, we can bet. We may have a bit of it on the side. So what else do I do? Oh, that's what I was going to show you. I knew there was something else. This is going to cook. So what I've done is I've softened the vegetables, I've added the herbs, the flavors had blended nicely and toasted very, very lightly. Put in the beans. I'm going to, Alexa, cook, set timer for 15 minutes for soup.
Soup timer, 15 minutes, starting now.
Okay, when that's finished, I'm going to open it up and put in the kale. This is lacinato kale. It's what some people call, show you. I don't know if you can see that darker, stiffer, a somewhat tougher kale. The crinkle kale is thinner, and although I may cook this for 7 to 10 minutes to wilt it before serving it, in this case, I'm not serving it tonight for dinner, but the crinkle kale, you will usually do a little less because it's just a finer texture. So when this is finished for that 15 minutes, that's all we need for this. I'll evaluate whether or not I want to blend it. Actually, the smart thing to do, because if you've made soups and refrigerated them, things like bean soups or lentil soups or split pea soups, when you refrigerate them, this will have to cool completely before I put it in the refrigerator, of course, but when you refrigerate them, the starches break down even more and the soup just gets thicker. But if I evaluate that I do want it to be a little bit creamier, then I may just run the immersion blender in it just for a moment to break up some of the beans, and the soup would then have a creamy look rather than just a brothy and chunky look. And we'll decide. I am bringing this back to a boil, and then I'm going to simmer it for 10 to 15 minutes. And okay, so let me talk to you about other things that I'm eating. An example is tacos. I love, love, love tacos, but what am I going to make them with, and how am I going to do it easy? One of the things about Goodbye Lupus, Hello Delicious, Dr. Goldner's marvelous book, is that she talks a lot about doing things that are quick and easy. I was just about to, and I just ran out of time, make this. I've made the zucchini noodles with marinara sauce, just delicious. And this is the cucumber noodles. I had the cucumber out and everything, but I'll do that tomorrow with a tomato sauce. Well, the tomato sauce is so fun because it is cherry tomatoes, which are more dense. And so it's going to be a thicker, you know, they're dense because they're small. They're not a big, a juicy tomato. With some garlic, red onions, some flax oil, and some nutritional yeast. So sort of a cheesy sauce over cucumber, over crisp cucumber, and eaten raw. So even on step down, I do a number of raw dishes. But the point I was going to make about this is she talks a lot about doing things quickly, easily, and allowing you to do the fun in life, the communication and bonding with other people, not necessarily all around food, so that you can do what you're going to do easily, quickly in the kitchen, and then move on. So why am I going on about that? Because there are products out in the market that you can use that are not processed in the way we're trying to avoid, because they have nothing in them but the things that we are able to eat on this protocol. This is lentils, salt, and it says essential oils of cloves, laurel, thyme, pepper, and garlic, which really means, in essence, those herbs pressed and then their fiber taken out. That's how they would get the oil out of it. I'm assuming. Somebody can tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not worried about the little amount of that this would be representing. And it's lentils. The fat in a serving is 0.5, which is, lentils have fat. So again, we're not looking at added oils here, but these are steamed lentils. They're, I believe, a product of France. I'm not sure. Yeah, product of France, and they're delicious. It's a pound 0.6, or 1 pound, 1 ounce, 0.6. In other words, just over a pound. And I don't always use this seasoning. It's just taco seasoning mix. I have other brands of taco seasoning mix that are really clean, and a chopped onion, a can of tomatoes. I happen to like Muir Glen. sauteed lightly, this thrown in, a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of taco sauce, certainly not the whole bag. And then let it cook for 15 minutes to blend flavors. That is a delicious taco filling. The thing about it, it makes so much, I think this is oil, no, not quite. It makes so much that I can store it in 2-cup containers, 1.5 cups, 2 cup, because if you're making tacos, it's usually taco filling. It may be some, oh, I don't know, shredded cabbage, some pico de gallo, some guacamole. And so there's usually a lot of volume in there besides just the taco filling, and it goes far. Well, what do I do with that if I'm not using it for tacos? I'll put it in a pan, add some broth, add some steamed vegetables, or well, so I don't have to cook it too long. Just cook them very quickly, steam them, or even some of you will plug your ears and scream, don't do that, but I do. Put them in the microwave for a couple of, well, like 1.5 minutes for zucchini, and it cooks it. And then throw that in, it's just about boiled. And then throw that into the soup. And I have a lentil soup, and I can have it instantly, and yet it's in a condensed package. So with a Latin flair, of course, because it's going to have the cumin and the paprika and the flavors that you're going to find in the Latin dishes. Another thing that I love to do is squashes. And even though I don't think that spaghetti squash, well, I guess it's a squash. I was going to say I think it's more like a gourd, but I don't know. But butternut squash and spaghetti squash with the dish I just showed you, the tomato sauce over the cucumber, that would be marvelous over spaghetti squash. The cucumber is in Goodbye Lupus, Hello Delicious, because that's the pure protocol, whereas the spaghetti squash, which is cooked, would be part of Step Down, and the butternut squash could be simply baked. Some people will put these in their Instapot, cook them for maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then let it naturally come down, and they've got a soft squash that they can then cube up and either put in a soup or blend into a creamy dish. And this is another one. This is the Cinderella squash. A lot of us found these at farmers markets right after after Halloween, because a lot of people bought these because they're so pretty on the porch, and the vendors had a lot of them, and mine in particular, my farmer's market, just cut them up. Well, I sliced, and you have to do it carefully, I sliced it into 1.5 inches thick slices, and put some cinnamon on it and a little drizzle of broth, and then put them in the oven and bake them under foil, and then take the foil off to brown them, actually brown them, and did the entire process in my Breville oven. Let me just check things. Okay. And they were absolutely delicious. So those are starches. They're whole food plant-based, and they are delicious. They're Step Down simply because they're they are steamed, or they're cooked in some way. Step Down isn't going out and having, well, I'll say necessarily, and I'm gonna stick with just my belief that I don't think we should, things like processed plant proteins. In other words, the Impossible Burgers, which are 80% fat, and the tofurkey products that are highly processed, because we're still trying to nourish our bodies well enough to keep the healing process going. Unlike what I did with something that I knew I shouldn't, the gluten, but just hoped, because I wanted it that way, that it wouldn't matter. Okay. This is looking so great. and it smells terrific. Okay. I have on my channel, Nan Simonson, it's YouTube Nan Simonson. I do most on YouTube. Facebook will get what I do on YouTube in an easy, well, in a Facebook form or Instagram in an instant form, but I don't produce necessarily for those. Short-sighted, but that's what I do. And on my channel, you can find many, well, there are 350 something videos. A lot of them are based on health and lifestyle training, because as a health and lifestyle coach with a lifestyle medical practice going on 7 years now, it's what I do. And it's the way I live my life. I wrote my book, Aging Power Play, well, 4 years ago, just before turning 70, as a celebration to my realization, the celebration of what I came to realize, and that is, with lifestyle as medicine, we can expect to go on decades longer, decades in great health. Going plant-based made a huge difference. We teach our patients in lifestyle medicine to eat plant-based exclusively if they can. And we see people all the time reverse things that, again, most doctors tell them they'll be taking medicine for the rest of their lives, and that's just not necessarily so. So on my channel, you'll see a lot of recipes that are whole food plant-based, no oil, low salt, no sugar. I use date paste to sweeten things. Usually not any other kind of sweetener. Occasionally I'll have a recipe that will allow maple syrup, even though that's still a sugar that we can get so used to that we want it all the time. And that's the point. We're trying not to do that. So I have in my refrigerator what I call a library of food. They're all labeled, they're all dated, so I'll look for dates and I'll look for the foods that I want, and I label them in such a way that I'll know to find the recipe again. And in that library, I'll have some of this soup, you can bet. If I had made more than just one extra dish of the shells, I would have had an additional dish of shells in there. I've made this enough to know that even though they don't cook perfectly after being frozen, it works pretty well. And so for that effort, it's a fun way of being able to pull out a food, defrost it in the refrigerator is the best way to do it. If you're defrosting a soup and you're leaving it on the counter all day, I put a bowl on top of it to create a bit of more of a cold environment, because you don't want the soup and its outer portion that's defrosting to get warmer and warmer as you're waiting for the inside to defrost. But the point of the shells that I showed you, I think, is that ricotta, because it's with the nutritional yeast, cannellini beans, tofu. It's high fiber, high protein, delicious. And you can use it in a number of dishes. You can roll it in cooked pasta. One of the things I did on vacation, because I didn't have the shells, was that I had made for one meal it was a plant pasta. I believe it was lentil, really high protein. But I had made a lentil pasta, and there was a lot left over for the crowd because we had 3 families together. And the leftovers I put in a pan on top of a big mound of lightly steamed spinach with garlic. And then, so the pasta on top of that, and then dollops of, in other words, just mounds.
Your soup timer is done.
Thank you, Alexa. And then mounds of the,
Your soup timer is done.
Alexa, turn off the timer. And then mounds of the tofu, and mounds of the ricotta. among that extra sauce that sort of bubbled up. It was delicious. It was easy. So having things like that around, having things in the freezer can make things really easy. If you simply scroll through my channel and look at the playlists of the things you're looking for, lots and lots of soups, because that's one of the things that on a simple day, if I give you what I eat in a day, this is it. There's my smoothie still. I start off the day with some smoothie. I have a little bit more in the midday. The morning I started about 7:30 with my smoothie. By 9 or 10, I'm having the first third in the morning, second third, 9 or 10. After lunch, usually about 2 or 3 or maybe even 4, I'll finish off the rest of this. For lunch, I make a salad. I make a big chopped salad of kale, chopped kale that it's chopped again, kale, red cabbage, carrot, radishes. I'll put some kind of fruit chopped. Right now it's the fuyu persimmons that I just love, chopped up in there. It could be apple, but it wouldn't be a whole apple. It might be about a half of an apple. And her dressing, one of Dr. Goldner's dressings. And the salad means that I'm getting an additional 6 ounces of greens and gosh, about 4 or 5 ounces of more vegetables. It's almost a pound salad. That's every day. Dr. Goldner eats less than I do. She eats or has her smoothie, and this is step down. She's step down. She has her smoothie all day long, no lunch, usually, as she describes. And then she has the salad that I would have at lunch for dinner, big salad. And that's when she eats her cooked food. She'll have soups. I have soups like crazy. As I said, our refrigerator's filled with them, soups and stews and some other dishes. And I'm gonna uncover this.
And I was wondering, the taco, are you making the lettuce tacos?
No, good question, just a minute. No, there is a brand that I use, Mi Rancho organic corn tortillas. And they have a thin, credible tortilla that, even though I don't count calories, I for 6 years now have been able to maintain my weight. I lost weight with her Goodbye Lupus and that just hasn't come back on. But I use this as an example for how thin they are. A typical corn tortilla is about 70 calories, 70, 80, something like that. The thin credibles are 35 calories. So in other words,
Wow.
it's a very thin tortilla. Well, I'll have 3 of those loaded with the taco and cabbage. And it's one of my favorite meals. It's one of my husband's favorite meals. He says, make it anytime you want. He just loves it. Now I'm going to show you.
But now you do it with the lentils and
Now I do it with, and I didn't have those at all.
ooh, oh my
Look,
gosh. Yeah.
Doesn't that look good? Now watch what I'm going to do. And I'm gonna let that go 7 minutes more.
Can you do this in the Instant Pot or you always do it on the
Well,
stove?
that's a great question, because most of the soups that I make, I cook in the Instant Pot. If any of you are not familiar with the cookbook Vegan Under Pressure by Jill Nisanow,
Mm.
she's my best friend. She doesn't know me. Actually, we've met a couple of times at events at Rancho La Puerta. I was Chef AJ's sous chef there 3 times. And I have been there 5 times in the last few years. And I've gone to her classes. I love that book, Vegan Under Pressure, because she has charts for grains, charts for rice, charts for legumes, and her charts are accurate. There are a number of other sources that promote the Instapot or pressure cooker, But I find that almost everything is overcooked, whereas her, for example, chickpeas, she recommends if you're gonna soak them, she recommends 13 to 15 minutes max. And the Instapot, and a number of them that I see show 18 to 20 minutes or more for the chickpeas. So I like what she does. So I'm gonna show you this. I'm gonna cover it and cook it another 8 minutes, but take a look at this beauty.
Wow. That, oh my
That look
gosh.
great.
Yeah.
And
So mirepoix, is that a specific combination of vegetables?
a mirepoix
Wow.
for a French dish is usually, and actually, Trader Joe's, I believe, has a container that I think they call mirepoix. But it's Maripoux, something like that. But it's usually, thank you, Alexa,
Your
turn it
art-
off. Turn off timer. That's my artichoke.
Your artichoke's timer is done.
Thank you. Turn off timer,
Your
Alexa.
artichoke's timer is done.
Turn off my timer. You know who gave me this idea? I didn't want one of these.
Chef AJ.
Watched Chef AJ many, many times in her kitchen talking to her timer, and it's been really helpful. So I decided that I would do it. Okay, and let me cover this. I know I just interrupted myself. Well, actually, I'm not even gonna cover it.
You were going to tell me the mirepoix combination.
yes,
Jennifer
okay.
says Trader Joe's does
It's
have it.
onion, celery, carrot, garlic, and depending on the additional savory ingredients needed for the dish, sometimes they would put fennel in there. But that's not one of the classic basics. And then you have your typical herbs, but the mirepoix is primarily just those vegetables that you start with that give them, they call them aromatics. Aromatics are your onions, your celery, your carrot.
And garlic.
And there might be, garlic, the alliums, the allium family.
Very good.
So I'm looking at this, and because I'm not going to eat it, so I'll tell you that typically if I were going to eat this now, I would cook it just a couple of minutes more to get the lacinato kale softer, but I don't want it to turn
brown.
Yeah, I don't want it to look like fatigues. And I'm going to put in a couple of tablespoons of lemon juice. Taste it. I'm sure I'll put a little bit more salt. And oh my goodness. I have the red, the chopped red pepper in there, and I like that little bit of heat. But look, isn't that pretty?
Just, oh my gosh, how could you not eat
I
that?
know. And then I have
Oh man.
sit on it. Yeah, it does. Yay. And I have my, well, big giant. That's what I don't want my kale to look like.
Yeah.
Tea green. So I'll let those stay hot. And when I take those out to eat, as I said, I'll put the broccoli back in. I still have enough water in there. So oh, and then I'll just finish. Lunch is the salad. Dr. Goldner then has her cooked food in the evening. Well, I do the same thing. I then have most of anything that I'm going to have that's cooked. It will be in the evening, and that's when we'll have the tacos. I could stuff the if not stuff them like an acorn squash, I could put over a roasted the Cinderella squash or the butternut squash, some of the lentil taco filling, and we'd have that really savory, spicy over something that's sweet. You can do it with a sweet potato, same kind of thing. That's what stepping down is meant to me, the squashes, the cooking, but still the very, very healthy foods. I'm doing fewer things with grains. I know that Dr. Goldner is not crazy about rice because she calls it inflammatory. And I was interested in that comment, and so I looked it up to see what she meant. And it's because it has a high glycemic index, and anything that has a high glycemic index could be inflammatory, especially with people that have insulin dysregulation. And so I understand that. And what I find I'm doing more and more is looking at what I'm eating with the intention that I want to be a healthy, vivacious 80 and then 90-year-old and surprise myself and anybody else that's paying any attention by then by going through that 100 threshold, the way they do in the blue zones. And that is in good health, in clear mind, and in happiness. And and this is what Dr. Goldner says in a way, I'm paraphrasing. She says, if I know what it was like to feel like I was dying regularly because the lupus was trying to kill me, and I knew I could be clear of that by making these choices, why wouldn't I? That's why she's still hyper-nourishing every day. And I say the same thing. Why wouldn't I hyper-nourish? It's not always easy to get that pound of greens and cruciferous down all day long, but I do it because why wouldn't I? And then choosing the foods, for example, she will, for her grains, even though it's a seed, have quinoa, because quinoa is one of the highest nutrient sources of well, people eat it as a grain. And so she makes decisions like that about food, and I'm finding I'm doing the same thing. I'll evaluate the possibilities, and yes, I do pasta, but I'm looking for the pastas with the highest fiber, which meant that they left most of the body of that legume, for example, intact, and then it's simply rehydrated. So those are some of the things that I do. And again, on my channel, you have a lot of recipes. And as she said, and I like this, I was listening to her the other day. Oh boy, I get to show you something now, something like that.
I want to know too, have any of your symptoms come back?
Oh, nothing, no. Oh, yes,
Wow.
because one of my symptoms was that I had inflammation in a knee that was damaged because, as the MRI described it, I had a complex multiple tear bilateral meniscus damage. So my meniscus was somewhat torn up, and it was hurting until the 3rd week of the protocol. And then it stopped hurting. On the 4th week, I said to my husband, I'm walking around the block with you and not having any pain. And that has stayed in abatement. And that is because this is a protocol, hypernourishment that helps build or work with cellular repair and the reduction of inflammation. And that's what I credit the need to. I fell on thanks, I wasn't going to say this, but all kinds of things come out of my mouth I don't mean to say. We were at a friend's house, 22 of us, marvelous meal. I don't drink, and so I didn't. And so it wasn't that. But the staircase, it was 3 steps down, I thought. No, it was 4 steps down, I thought. What did I think? I don't know what. It was dark and I couldn't see going down these brick steps. And I did a step thinking there was another step, and there wasn't. And so when I went further down, struck the foot of the bad knee, and then fell. I mean, just fell on my side, my back, and all of that. And you know what surprised me? I had a sore foot. Hold on. that I actually thought might be broken because it swelled up and it was very, very painful that night. And yet it's been what, 3 days since Thanksgiving, 4 days since Thanksgiving, and it feels just fine, no problem.
Wow.
And I went on a walk last night, so I have to say to myself that I'm doing the right thing to keep my body from being so inflamed that an injury then takes forever to heal. Look, now I'm gonna put this back in.
Wow.
I want it to be a little bubblier, so I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
take the cover off, put it on high.
Jennifer says, yum, Nan, I wish I could come over for dinner.
Yeah, that'll be perfect for dinner. It'll be in about 10 minutes. It'll be bubbly and it'll be brown on top. And that's how we roll now. So
Wow.
anything else?
Does anybody have any burning questions? It is 5, so I understand if you all need to get going.
Oh, I'll show you. It's always more fun to spoon up a.
I just want to know, does Tim ride a bike?
What?
Does Tim ride a bike?
He and I ride together on Sunday. We do an hour-and-a-half ride,
Uh-huh.
but he loves his walk up the mountain. We have a mountain that's about 1,000-foot rise. And so it's not too strenuous, but it takes him an hour based on the trails. And he does that every morning. And he starts out in the dark. He is so disciplined. He has his routine and he does that before he comes home and gets ready to go to work. But can you see
That's
this?
great, Nan. Don't you think you
What I'm
should take a
gonna do,
big
I'm gonna-
spoonful?
There.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Oh, that is gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. And again, and I'm tempted, let me put this back up. I'm tempted to blend it, and yet I love a clear broth with a lot of vegetables. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm just going to let it, and it'll thicken by tomorrow. The soup will be thick and I'll be spooning it up with what won't look like a liquid broth. It'll look more dense. And then when I heat it, it'll kind of open up again and I'll add more broth to it. Maybe, I'm not sure. So
Thank you
there are
so much.
questions, then I hope